yourself a cold one.
Let's strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it is Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast presented by DraftKings. And it is August, and we have real, live college football games that count and everything this month. Get fired up. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Those of you that check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL can see all the helmets and game balls and all the teams I played for. I don't need to go through all of them. I am in the podcast game, also a broadcaster. I'll be doing, I believe, 15 college football games for CBS Sports Network this year. Cannot wait. Fired up for that. I also will be doing the Eagles preseason games starting in 9 days. So my season is just about ready to get cranked up. Check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. Certainly all of our shows, we post them and the clips of the shows to at Ross Tucker Pod as well. But I make no mistake about it. The star of the show, after a 1-week hiatus, was a little bit under the weather, which, by the way, is good timing because his season's about to start now, too. My man, Emery Hunt, known as at FBall Game Plan on Twitter and certainly Football Game Plan on YouTube. I saw on Twitter, Emery, this is year 14. I love that you know how many years you've been doing this.
Yeah, man, it's always fun to take stock of what you've done and where you've gone and how far you've traveled and where you are currently and how much more you're excited about doing in the future. And it's blows my mind that it is year 14. I'm excited about what we have coming down the pike. Some big announcements coming soon, and also stuff that we're building blocks for in the future. So I'm just happy, man. It's 14 years and still growing. That's a good thing.
Heck yeah, it is still growing with every year. I say it every week. This guy is going to be a star on everybody's TV or whatever very, very soon. I think he already is, to be honest with you. Especially with how big YouTube's getting. Again, Football Game Plan on YouTube. We are youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Today, we're going to dive into the Big Ten, which I think is interesting because you got your top 10 prospects. Now, you got to tell me if it's your top 10. Is it your – we'll start there. Is it your top 10 prospects ranked, Emery, or your 10 favorite? I'm just curious.
It's just 10 favorites or like 10 guys out of the Big Ten that folks should get familiar with. Because again, if I did a ranking right now, people will be locked in on that. And, obviously that stuff changes over the course of a season or as you get more tape and dive more into the film. But this is just initial, almost like a watch list.
10 guys that you think everybody needs to make sure they're aware of going into the season. I get it. It's just what jumped out to me. There's no Penn State guys. I was like, oh, okay. And so, but that's fine because I can actually add a couple of names of Penn State guys people should be aware of. And then you don't have like Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver from Ohio State, but you do have Zach Harrison, Thayer Munford, Chris Olave, Haskins Garrett. So you do have a bunch of Ohio State guys, 4 out of the 10. So looking forward to diving into that momentarily. However,
and the just not to cut you off, but the reason why is that early on, and I don't think a lot of people do this, although they should, especially early in the process. I tend to tilt heavily toward seniors, because you want to show, you want to give those guys that are going to be graduating and know that are going to be in the draft, they're just due. So that's the difference between Wilson and Olave. Olave, I believe, is a senior, and Wilson is still an underclassman technically.
Exactly. That makes perfect sense. I asked Fran this last week, Emery, but I got to get your perspective on it as well. Huge news in college football. And I should remind everybody, once the season gets started, I mean, not only are we talking about the biggest games, we're talking about the best players in the biggest games, and Emery's giving you his picks against the spread. So this is like a college football podcast, a college football betting podcast, and an NFL draft podcast all in one podcast. We're getting 3 for the price of 1, and the price is nothing. All you do is listen or watch. So that's good value. We know good value. But I do have to ask you this, Emery. Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. I'm giving you a blank slate, blank canvas. What's your reaction, and what does it mean in your mind for college football and maybe college football scouting, NFL draft moving forward?
I'm a traditionalist, Ross, and I miss the smaller regional conferences. And I'm pretty sure in a moment of clarity, the ADs of all college athletics will tell you the same thing. They will rather have bus leagues than flight leagues, because it keeps everything regional, keeps costs down, and the rivalries just make sense. Now you have an SEC that's expanding to include more Texas schools. Oklahoma, when I think Southeast, I don't think Oklahoma. I think
Oklahoma Southwest. They used to be in the Southwest Conference.
Bingo, and that's my whole point, man. It's like, I don't. We had super conferences before. If you remember this, Ross, remember how the WAC was the first conference to go 16 teams, and then Conference USA went 16 teams. It's like, wait a minute, this is way too many schools in a conference. You got a conference that has UTEP and doggone a team out east and Old Dominion or somebody like that, or East Carolina. It's too far. But I think if we go back to smaller regional conferences, the rivalries mean more, and the games be more exciting. We have gone a decade without watching Texas play Texas A&M, and it takes a super conference for that to happen when they are in the same state and they're a big time rival. So for me, I understand it's strictly a money move, and I just know we're trending toward more money type moves in the future. But I just hate the fact that we are now going to get a 16 team SEC. Everybody can't be in the SEC. When you add more teams to the SEC, it no longer becomes the SEC. And so I just wish we go back to a time where it was more regional. More conferences are good. It's because it's more regional, and those rivalries get to be stronger.
Yeah, I hate it. I'll just say it. I hate it. I understand why they're doing it. Look, certain teams move the needle in terms of ratings more than others do. So the SEC poached the 2 teams in the Big 12 that really move the ratings, Oklahoma and Texas. I get that. But what's the whole point of a conference? I mean, the whole point of a conference is to organize teams in an area so that makes sense logically to play against each other. So you have logical, natural rivalries. And some of these conferences where, the women's golf team is flying now from UConn to UTEP or whatever it is, it's just asinine. And I know they make up the difference in the money because of what football brings in. They can pay for the flights for the women's golf team or whatever it is. I'm just making it up. But how is that experience for those student athletes? Like, it's not supposed to all be about money, right? Like, these are still college athletes. It's supposed to be Princeton's motto is education through athletics. Like, how does it make sense to have them on a flight from Hartford, Connecticut to wherever for, however many girls or guys or whatever sport it is to play? It's so stupid. It drives me nuts.
And
there's enough money to go around if they just realized that there's a more effective way to do this.
And the amount of class time that you're missing unnecessarily, it just doesn't make sense from a scholastic standpoint. And again, it's just far too fat, to be all about money. I just don't like it. And people keep saying, "Oh, the SEC." Nobody's checking for that, 7:00 Vanderbilt, South Carolina game. When people talk SEC, they're talking about 5 teams. And now with Oklahoma and Texas, they're talking about 7 teams. No one cares about, to the same level, about Vanderbilt football as they do about Alabama football. So people get it twisted and think, oh yeah, it's just, that's how good the SEC is. No, that's how good the 5 teams y'all always talk about are, juxtaposed to South Carolina, sometimes Tennessee in Vanderbilt and maybe Arkansas every now and then.
Maybe you and I, Emery, should be the ones that run or are in charge of college football or the NCAA. I know this, the best place to hire people, LinkedIn Jobs. They have made it easier to find and hire the best candidates for free. Look, everybody knows I've got GoBigRecruiting.com, MyFrontPageStory.com. I've got RT Media, the podcast business. Hiring is hard. I get interns every semester. I just hired somebody full-time for MyFrontPageStory.com. Thank goodness for LinkedIn Jobs. 740 million professionals. That's crazy. They fill out targeted screening questions to get your role in front of the most qualified candidates. It's easier to filter and prioritize when you have 740 million people there. LinkedIn Jobs will help you hire the right person for your role. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your first job for free at linkedin.com/draft. That's linkedin.com/draft to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I don't need anybody else to co-host the college football draft. It's Emery Hunt because he's a stud and always has been, always will be. I like your number one guy here, Emery. I remember him from the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, George Karlaftis, the DN from Purdue.
And he's one of those guys when you watched in high school, you're like, damn, this dude is solid. Like in the sense that he can come in and play right away, and then you start to hear the reports when he got on campus at Purdue, like, yeah, this guy is going to start right away and play right away. So he was college ready from the jump and just has good overall game, man. And you talk about someone that's a very good defensive player on both ends of defense, has a lot of technical skills. You worry about the injuries that he's had all throughout his career, but when he's healthy and out there on the field, he's a difference maker. And I just think that he's one of those guys that is going to have a long career as a pro player because he plays a pros game. He played a college game at the high school level, and now as a collegiate, he's playing a pro game. So I just love the prospect in Karlaftis.
Yeah, relentless, really powerful lower body, really good with his hands. That was a big get for Purdue. Different body type, though, Emery, than the next guy, DN Zach Harrison from Ohio State.
Yeah, and linear guy, but twitched up and ready to go, turn the corner. And you saw him just have, a lot of big plays last year. And to me, when you flash at the most important times, that to me has a lot of significance. I do that for quarterbacks. I call it having a sense of the moment, having that good timing. Okay, we need a play. He's the guy that's going to make it. Well, you need to stop defensively, or you need that pressure or that sack or someone to make a play up front. Harrison is usually that guy. And again, you're well coached by Larry Johnson, who's the best defensive line coach in football. We're talking about pro and college. And he's going to continue to add more tools to his toolbox as he makes the jump to the pro game.
What about Thayer Munford? Let's stay in the trenches for Ohio State. Thayer Munford, what a name, by the way. Thayer Munford. Sounds like this guy should be like a trust fund, baby. Doesn't sound like he should be playing offensive tackle for Ohio State. Thayer Munford. Wow.
Yeah, like the best friend of Richie Rich, right? So you look at what he does.
Dude,
well,
remember that show? Is that show still around? Richie Rich. I used to watch the crap out of Richie Rich.
Right. Every morning before school, it was one of those early morning weekday cartoons. I used to always watch that as well. Again, damn, we showing our age once again with these cartoons, with these references. But yeah, Mumford is good, man. And it's one of those guys that probably could have came out last year if he was eligible, and definitely would have been a high first round pick. I see him more along the lines of what you expect from that position. A dominant player, consistent player, athletic. Ohio State has done a fantastic job over the last decade. Let's say since Urban Meyer got there to now continuing over to Ryan Day's tenure. of developing O-line and D linemen. They are strong at the point of attack, which is why they win a lot of games.
It's a really good point. There's no question about it, Emery. When you watch them, I was surprised at how well they handled Penn State last year up front on both sides of the ball. I mean, there's a reason why they are as good as they are. How about number 4, D-end Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan? I feel like I've seen this name a bunch of places. Tell me about Aiden.
Yeah, he's someone that's I think has a little bit of versatility. You know, you could rush him on the outside. He could rush from the inside. So if you want to have some type of NASCAR package, you can kick him down inside. He's able to whip a guard all day. He's strong on the edge in terms of setting the edge and playing the run. Technically sound player as well, so he uses his hands well. He's got good core strength, so you're not going to blow him off the ball. You know, if you're trying to reach block him, it's tough to do that because he stops it right there and kind of bottles things up, in procession. So I just think that good overall skill set. Some people look for the splash plays and the wow plays, and that's why some people don't see him as a first round player. But when you project him to the NFL, he's another one of these guys who's going to play a long time because of all the things that he does so well and also brings versatility to the table up front. So I like him. I like his ability versus the run and against the pass. I just think that he's one of those good, solid football players. He may be more Sam Hubbard than anything, but Sam Hubbard just got a big contract and is a starter up front for the Bengals.
I was going to say, how does he compare to even like last year's first-round pick, Kwity Paye?
Being completely honest, he's more productive than Paye was. Paye was more flash and more, he moves fast, so you think he's doing all kind of stuff. But Hutchinson, to me, was the most productive guy on both ends, more so than Paye. Paye obviously is a twitched up guy. He's fast, he's active, he's athletic. But Hutchinson is actually the one that made most of the plays, in my opinion.
Interesting. I like that. All right, let's get to one of these Ohio State receivers, Chris Olave. They say it would have been a late first-round pick if he had gone in this year's draft. Man, I always think that's interesting when guys go back to school. Now, maybe he has a Devontae Smith-like year and shoots up, and maybe that's what they talked to him about. But I also know it seems to me like Justin Fields and Wyatt Davis, I'm not sure either one of those guys from a draft stock standpoint really benefited from playing this past year for Ohio State. So interesting decision by Olave. What kind of wide receiver is he?
It's funny when you have guys go back for a senior year. I think now we're starting to look at the NFL draft like the NBA draft. If a guy stays all 4 years or stays 3 years, you kind of like, man, what's wrong with you? Like, something must be wrong with his game, because he's supposed to come out as a freshman, or in the NFL case, he's supposed to always come out as a junior. But Olave to me has game that's very similar to Robbie Anderson. It's a smooth game. Someone that's able to slide past defenders, contort his body in a wide assortment of ways to make the reception. And he's already shown the ability to play with 2 feet in bounds, when he's going up to get a football. So I just think that he has good savvy, good elusiveness, good acceleration, good all-around receiver. And maybe that late first projection was right. But I just think that his game, to me, is very similar to that of Robbie Anderson.
Does he run as well? Robbie Anderson can fly, right? Is he that kind of deep threat?
I think he can be, especially when you think about how many times they went deep down the field off play action. And Olave was a direct beneficiary of that. And I just think that he does a good job in tracking the football. And I was at Temple's pro day when Robbie Anderson worked out.
Of course you were. Of course you were.
And I have a funny story. Like, he was going deep for a pass, and PJ Walker, Carolina Panthers number 2 quarterback, was the quarterback throwing the ball. Anderson was running like a takeoff route, and he was running so fast. And Temple's indoor facility is only so long. I mean, he hit the wall so hard. Like, I thought the building was about to collapse with how hard he hit the wall because how fast he was going. He kind of lost track of where he was, but that just shows the type of explosive speed that a guy like Robbie Anderson has. I was like, man, I hope he didn't kill himself before the draft by running through this indoor facility. But for someone like him and Olave, they do a good job of just that second gear. It's almost like, okay, if you're a corner, I'm running with them step for step. I got him. But when the ball is in the air, they just have that ability just to press the gas a little bit more and just dart past you enough to close on a football.
Let's get to another receiver. This one's Fry Fogle from Indiana.
He would have been my player that I would have thought would have came out last year. We saw a lot of Indiana football last season because they were really good. He was making a lot of plays, and we was like, man, him and Whop Fillier are the guys that, and I think Whop left early, and I was surprised Fry Fogle didn't. I was surprised he came back. That's a situation where you're not at the premier program. You're not the premier consensus guy. You're making plays now, and everybody's talking about you. Now you got to strike when the iron is hot. This is when you jump off and go to the draft. But he came back, and, you hope Michael Penix can be out there healthy for a full season and let him continue to be the number one option in the passing game. And I just think that, he's someone has, those strong hands at the catch point. He's a bigger receiver, has good acceleration. I was shocked that he came back, honestly. I thought he would have been one to clearly jump while his name was hot and try to take advantage of a 2020 situation.
So this next guy, I don't know if he was even eligible to be in the draft last year. He might have been. But, man, people really like him. It's the center from Iowa, Tyler Linderbaum. I've seen some clips of him. That is a smooth technician right there.
Oh, my God. His hands on the inside. He climbing to the second level. Just everything seems like a walkthrough with how efficient and effective you are in walkthrough, where everything is technically sound. But he's playing at a walkthrough type of execution level. It's like, man, this dude is so smooth, so good. And I've always been a big fan of guards and centers. I had no problem taking these guys in the first round because I think that's where the most crucial part of protection is. Right there in the middle, you could run the football if that's playing well. You could pass protect if that's playing well. And I just think that when you watch him play, technically sound, just smooth, like you talked about, able to work well on both ends of offense, run game, pass game, just flawless with his hands, which will always keep him in a good position to make the block.
What about the wide receiver from Nebraska? Another wide receiver, Samari Rolle.
Transferred from Montana. Big time threat with the Grizzlies, and took advantage of the Grizzlies not playing in the spring and transferred up to Nebraska. So now he was on the radar last year as a small college guy that is going to end up probably in the Shrine game or something like that because he was outstanding. He was dominant. Speed guy, rack guy, run after catch guy. And now he goes into a situation in Nebraska where they lose a Wan'Dale Robinson. He transferred out to Kentucky. And so they're looking for someone to replace that type of big play threat, that big play capability. So he's probably a virtual unknown amongst the draft community because we know the majority of the draft community, only focuses on the Power Five. And within the Power Five, they focus on the SEC and, some Big Ten and maybe, 5 players of the Pac-12, just, throw that in there. But no one talks about the small school guys. That's why you have me here. And this dude was dominant at the FCS level. Now we're going to see him go up to the FBS level in a position where they need someone to be a playmaker. Keep an eye out for Toure.
A running back, Mohammed Ibrahim from Minnesota. I feel like back in the day, that Minnesota used to have a bunch of good running backs. Remember any of those two guys, like Maroney, then Marion Barber? They used to have a lot of good backs.
Thomas Tapay, Thomas Hamner. Funny story. My sophomore year, we played University of Minnesota. We go up to Minneapolis back in the old Metrodome, which I still think to this day, even though it was only 50,000 people, probably the loudest stadium I've ever been in, because that flat roof, that sound just bouncing off the turf, it was so loud, juxtaposed to other big stadiums we played in. That day, we lost to Minnesota, obviously, and I felt like all they did was run the football because 3 running backs went over 100 yards that day, and the third string back was Marion Barber. So Maroney went over 100 yards. Tapay went over 100 yards. And they put the freshman in there, and Barber. He goes over 100 yards. So very familiar with that backfield at Minnesota. But this one here is along that same lines. You watch the game against Maryland. You watch him, keep the running game on pace. He's falling forward. He's what I would call a factor back. Just he doesn't have the wild traits, but is productive. Doesn't lose yards. Falls forward. Very good vision and footwork. Good contact balance. And someone that he may not go in the first round. He may be one of these second or third round type picks, but someone that could definitely be a starter like a Mike Davis at the next level.
Last guy at number 10, you got another D lineman from Ohio State. This one, Haskins Garrett, the D tackle.
I love how he's able to get off blocks. You see him just that swim over move. I mean, it's a savvy way he does it. Most guys like to slap the outside shoulder and then swim over. It's almost like he goes underneath. He takes that hand, let's say his right hand, and goes underneath and attacks the left chest plate of an offensive lineman, forcing you to then put your hand where he's putting his hand, and then whoop, he swims right over and he's over you. It's quick, it's subtle, it's smooth, and it's consistent. And he's someone that's dominant up front, is a disruptive force. And again, you're being well coached, you have the reps, you have the opportunity. I think he's someone that we should see as a first-round pick coming in April.
So I'll just mention two other guys quick that I know of. Maybe just off the top of my head, some Penn State guys, because I do watch every snap for Penn State. Their left tackle, Rasheed Walker, is very gifted. He did not take as much of a step last year as I thought he would. He was really good as a redshirt freshman. I thought he would take a big jump last year, Emery, and I thought he would turn pro last year. I think he probably wanted to, and he would have been drafted. I don't know how high. But I think he did the right thing by coming back to school, and they say he has the right mindset. A guy kind of came out of nowhere last year after they lost KJ Hamler. Jahan Dotson had an unbelievable year at receiver for Penn State. I'm glad he did the right thing coming back to school because there were so many good receivers in this last year's draft. And now he'll go into the season this year with people knowing about him. And I think there could have been an argument to be made for him to leave last year because I don't know if he'll have better stats this year. I mean, he was unreal last year. And I know Penn State's going to want to run the ball more and not be behind in as many games. And then I guess the last one that really jumps out to me defensively, they got two DBs that you should be aware of. Tariq Castro-Field seems like he's been there forever.
Right?
Very gifted, kind of up and down, but really gifted size, speed, athletic. He's what you're looking for. And then they got a guy, Emery, last year, Jaquan Brisker, who was a junior college transfer at safety. He had a really good year. And I think he was like a Senior Bowl invite, but because he was JUCO and the extra year eligibility with COVID, he was going to go to the Senior Bowl. He's like, nah, I'm going back to school. He's a ball hawk. He's good against run and pass. He's another guy to absolutely have your eyes on. So just adding a few extra guys, Penn State guys I know of, in addition to the 10 guys that Emery mentioned. Next week, who do we have left? We still have the ACC. We still have, we do Pac-12, SEC
Pac-12,
maybe?
And SEC.
All right. We got a couple more weeks. Then we got games. I love it. Check that man out. Football Game Plan on YouTube is where he's already a star. He's got to teach me how to be a YouTube star. I really want to be. My daughters want me to be a YouTube star. You got to give me some tips, Emery.
Yeah, start
Football
dancing,
Game
Ross.
Plan on YouTube. At FBall Game Plan on Twitter. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We're at Ross Tucker Pod. And, of course, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Other than that, the keg is kicked. We're all tapped out.
Thanks for listening to the College Draft Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, Even Money, and The Business of Sports. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.